Well, Finance Minister Dwight Duncan gave his economic update yesterday to a mixed response. And joining us now to make sense of it all is Nick Bontis, an award-winning professor with the DeGroote School of Business. Nice to have you here again. You were here yesterday as that update was being delivered. Now that you've had 24 hours to sort of reflect on this, does anything stand out or anything that you may want to point out that you haven't got a chance to?
Now that I've had a chance to think about it, Taz, I'm actually quite upset. So this is me putting the screws into Dwight Duncan to say, you know what, you didn't give us anything, Dwight. You promised us some savings, but really prices are going to go up with energy anyway, so there's no savings there with regards to hydro. You didn't say much about jobs. All you talked about was all the new jobs you created over the last few years. You didn't talk about the new jobs coming up over the next couple of years. You talked a little bit about the economic growth, but you said it was only going to be 2.2% when it was 3.2% last year. So in fact, it's actually slowing down by a percentage point. So all in all, Taz, I have to admit, I was expecting a lot. I was expecting to hear about healthcare. I was expecting to hear about education. I was expecting to hear about the economy. These are the things that Ontarians care about, and in the end, they really didn't promise anything. We all came out even.
When you talk about the slowing of economic growth, the fact that we are still growing to any degree, isn't that a good sign compared to our neighbors to the south of the border?
Absolutely. Positive GDP growth is a very good thing, but I would expect that because actually we were very, very frugal in terms of the banking system here in Canada, as well as the Bank of Canada in terms of monetary policy. The U.S. did slip into negative GDP growth just for a little while. We never did. That's why we're held in such high regard with all the other G8 countries around the world.
We have managed to pare down our deficit. I think it's down to 18.7 projected for the next year. When are we going to actually start making a major dent in this? I mean, is this cause for concern? We're actually being told that we should be happy it's down 25%.
We should be. I don't know. I mean, there's an old show, Little House on the Prairie, called, Cash on the Barrel. I got young children. Maybe when their children have children, we'll pay it down all, Taz. I'm not so sure when this is going to happen. It's funny how the government speak is about, managing the debt, managing the deficit, whereas the rest of us are just trying to deal with cash in and cash out. So the good news is that they got the $1 billion from the TerraNet license and they pay down a little bit of the principal. I'm going to have to turn that into positive news, but that was pretty much it in terms of positive news for yesterday's announcement.
Positive news for GM because their stocks went on sale at $33. They started trading immediately above that, hitting about $35 yesterday. Were you expecting them to do that well?
Typically, when it comes to IPO stock launches, especially the one the size of GM and with so much media buzz around it, you expect it to have a little bit of a pop on the first day, which it did. It wasn't huge. It wasn't .com huge. And then today, it kind of continued going sideways. The good news is still above the initial price. It's going to have to hit $53, which is another $20 at least per stock price in order for the governments to break even and recoup their money. I don't expect that to happen anytime soon. But in terms of the actual... I do expect it to happen ever, actually. I do, because General Motors has rationalized. They shut down 17 of 47 plants. They took away Pontiac. They took away Hummer and all those things. So it should happen.
All right, well, let's move on to another topic now, and a big one for us. Competition Bureau is seeking to impose more than $10 million against Rogers for allegedly misleading advertisers, saying its new chatter discount mobile service had fewer dropped calls. They studied this for 2 months and say there's no evidence to support that claim, and that's a big amount to have to pay back. How do you feel about that?
Well, there, Rogers. You just got slapped on the wrist, didn't you, for lying to customers? You're not allowed to do that. Competition Bureau is going to fine you. $10 million sounds like a lot of money, but you know what, Taz? It's nothing. It's a drop in the bucket for what Rogers got in terms of cash flow. So what Rogers is trying to do here is they're trying to low down and low ball the cheap end of the segment. All these new upstart mobile companies are in the cheap end of the segment, and Rogers is basically saying, hey, we're going to steal market share away from you guys, we're going to drive you guys out of business, and then we're going to go back to the original expensive pricing that Rogers has for most of their customers.
So is this a warning to everyone out there?
I think it's a warning that you can't lie, but more importantly, this is what I want to know. $10 million is a fine going to the Competition Bureau. How about you give some of that $10 million back to the customers that got ripped off?
Well,
there's an idea.
In fact, that's part of the plan. They have to drop the ad campaign and they have to compensate customers. So good to know those customers will be getting some of that money back. Well, speaking of money, a lot of people talking about the low interest rates for their houses. Although one analyst is warning that prices in 6 of our housing markets are in the bubble territory. And a lot of people worried that the bubble is going to burst. How do you see this? This is the same guy, incidentally, that predicted stuff in the United States was hopelessly in error.
That's right. I think he's a little bit of an alarmist. I don't think we're going to have a massive real estate crash anytime soon, but it is true. We have about 50% higher prices in terms of real estate on average than the U.S. right now. Historically, though, over the last few decades, they've always been more expensive, but it's only been about 20%. So we might see a little bit of a correction. And you're right, Taz, in some locations locations in Canada, the actual increase in prices for real estate was more significant than others. So you can't say that it's going to be across the, across Canada, there's going to be some sort of bubble that's going to burst here. I don't think that's going to happen. In terms of debt to income ratios, yes, we still have a lot of debt as Canadians, not so much though as the US did. So I think we're being a little bit more frugal as homeowners here in Canada.
So is this correction a bad thing for homeowners?
It's not a bad thing, but you have to be very, very careful, especially with timing, because right now we're getting close to the peak of the market, so you don't want to be actually overextending yourself, perhaps taking on a little bit too much more mortgage than you should, because all it's going to take is maybe 2 or 3 extra interest rate points in terms of a rise over the next 3 or 4 years, and all of a sudden your mortgage payment, you're not going to be able to afford it anymore. So you got to be very careful.
Those rates are going to go up, so that is a warning to everyone again. Let's talk about Facebook, because it revolutionized the social network and our entire way that we communicate, and now it's come up with this new messaging service it calls. I want to know, how is that different than regular email, and is it going to mean the end of Gmail? Because they're talking, it's being called the Gmail killer by some people.
Well, it's definitely not going to be the Gmail killer, I can assure you of that, and even Zuckerberg came out and said it's not going to be the Gmail killer. What Facebook has done is very, very simple. Facebook is the stickiest website on the web. What does that mean? More people stay on Facebook throughout the day than any other website. Think of when you go to Google, you go for a few seconds, then you take off. What Facebook knows, though, is when people leave the website, they typically go to their email program to check their email. So what does Facebook want to do? Not only do we want to keep you during the day when you update your wall, but we also want you to check your email within Facebook as well. Why? Because the more hours you're on Facebook, the more advertising, the more banner ads we can throw at you, and ultimately the more revenue they can make.
Do you think people are going to close their Gmail accounts, or are they going to keep them?
No way, Taz, no way. And people are so used to their accounts right now. You have a Gmail account, you have a corporate account, you have a Hotmail. You're used to your email account right now. I mean, do we really need another extra email account? I mean, aren't we suffering from information bombardment already? So I'll be hard pressed.
Points cards that you get when you visit department stores. I think people are getting kind of sick of those. Well, an interesting story surfaced this week. Donald Trump considering a run at the Oval Office. He says that everybody's ripping off the United States, and perhaps he's the man to fix this. He also says he would probably run as a Republican if he did. What do you think about this? Would this real estate mogul make a good president?
I think he would make a good president. Businessman. And more importantly, I think he would be entertaining. Because as a Canadian, that's why I love U.S. politics. Because when Clinton was in town, we had so much fun as Canadians. And then, of course, we had Bush, and we were pretty bored. And Obama's pretty boring as well. People like Sarah Palin because she's causing so much controversy. So I think a nice little internal Republican war between Sarah Palin and Trump, that'd be fun.
This isn't just about entertainment. This is about economic policy. This is a man who has built up an empire for himself. You think he's going to do a better job of running the company and taking the U.S. out of the slump they're in?
Taz, it is about entertainment. It's about building his brand. It has nothing to do with politics. There's no way Donald Trump is ever going to be the president.
Maybe that's the incentive that he, for why he might actually consider it. But, I mean, if he was actually to be elected, do you think he would manage finances better?
I don't think so, because managing finances in government is a totally different beast than managing your own private corporation, which he's done, and he's done well. But you have to understand, in government, things move slowly. You have to actually get the electorate on board. You have to be collaborative with a whole bunch of people. Those are words, collaboration and electorate, that, Donald Trump, he doesn't use those in his vocabulary. That's right, you're just fired.
Okay, quick question. Who's a better option, Sarah Palin or Donald Trump?
In terms of the government being run, Sarah Palin, because she has experience from Alaska. In terms of entertainment, Donald Trump.
All right, well said. That is Bontis on Business for this week. Be sure to check out his website, nickbontis.com.